Great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Tucson-Pima County Historical Commission Plans Review Subcommittee meeting of Thursday, May 12th, 2022. Call to order at 1:01 p.m. And I'll go ahead and call roll. Terry Majewski is here. Savannah McDonald.
Here.
Carol Griffith.
Here.
Ricky Riojas.
Here.
Joel Ireland.
Here.
And Jan Mulder.
Here.
Great, thank you. So we have 6. Item 2 is approval of the legal action report / minutes for the meeting of April 28th, 2022. Could I have a motion to that effect, please?
I'll move approval.
Okay.
Joel.
Okay, and who will second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there discussion? Okay, I'll go ahead and call roll. Terry says aye. Carol?
Aye.
Savannah?
Aye.
Joel?
Yes.
Jan?
Aye.
And Ricky?
Aye.
Thank you. It passes unanimously 6-0. Item 3, historic preservation zone review cases are cases that we review under UDC section 5.8/TSM 9-02.0.0 historic district design guidelines and revised Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines. Case 3A is HPZ 22035 at 5440 East Presidio. This is for construction of a new pergola, a rear yard gate, front door on main house, and windows at front entrance. This is a full review in the Fort Lowell Historic Preservation Zone. This is a non-contributing resource, and we use the rehabilitation standards. And Jody, do you have any background on this?
Yes, so this is a project, it's kind of a continuation of a project that you saw a couple months ago for a guest house that they were building. When they originally had submitted for the guest house, they were proposing a shade sail to cover a parking area. And the Fort Lowell Historic Zone Advisory Board didn't feel that the shade structure was appropriate to the district. They also had a couple other things that still needed to be worked out. And so they were originally going to move forward as a minor review. Those items were the front door, the windows around the front door, and the gate to the rear yard area where the guest house is located. They were supposed to do a minor review for those, but they opted to add while that dog fight's going on, I'm going to mute that. But they opted to add a pergola instead of the shade structure, which bumped them to the full review, which is why they're back in front of you. So they went to the Fort Lowell Historic Zone Advisory Board on May 3rd, and the project was recommended with the condition that the posts on the guest house are square and rusticated and with a base topped with flagstone, that the drainage will continue with a gentle slope, and that if the applicant is unable to get the design proposed for the door, that they will return for another minor review. And Steve Bond, the architect, and Deborah Lazar, the property owner, are both here. And Steve, I muted you because your dogs were having a fight.
Okay, so I have a question before we start. Had we already approved that shade sale and then they came back and said they didn't like it?
The shade sale, they didn't, off the top of my head, I'm gonna have to look it up on the decision letter. But if I recall correctly, the shade sale did not make it into the decision letter as approved.
Okay, because I'm recalling that we did discuss that, and then there was discontent with that decision. I'm not sure, but anyway, so we're looking at it as if they're not doing it now and they're doing something else.
Yeah, now they're proposing to do a pergola.
Okay, so, and I'm sorry, who's here to present again?
Steve Bond is the architect and Deborah Lazar is the property owner.
Okay. All right, and who will be presenting then, Steve?
Steve, but Steve needs to unmute.
Okay,
I'm gonna unmute. Hopefully, sorry, I've got both doors closed and the dogs seem to be barking, but now I don't, in fact, Deborah just called me like 20 minutes ago and told me about this meeting. I did not get the email for some reason. I know I saw my email address was on the list there, but it didn't, for some reason, it didn't come to me. But anyway, I'm here now. I don't have if you have the plans, can you possibly share those, Jody?
Yeah, just a minute. I'll share
Okay.
those.
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
because essentially what we've done is we agreed to delete the shade sails and we added a wood pergola to connect the two buildings. Thank you, Jody. And the plans here show on the site plan, you can see, thanks again, Jody, here, that little dashed area where she's running the cursor around, we have a proposed wood pergola to join the two buildings. Because what we're trying to do, the shade sails were there to create some kind of shade for parking. And since that wasn't approved or acceptable, we decided to come back with a pergola per the owner's suggestion that helps, create some shade there for a parking space. And it's basically, kind of a just a large dimension lumber pergola made out of 3x8s and connected to the two buildings. And if you go to sheet, let's see, I think it's going to be sheet, yeah, well, you can see now there on sheet 2. Yeah, thank you. That's a kind of a plan view of the two spaces and also a plan view of what that pergola is going to look like with the 3xs on, running at 16 inches on center, one direction. And then we've got some braces running across them, some tubular steel braces up there that'll be patinaed to rust, kind of match the other steel posts that we have. And then wood will be painted a dark brown color. And so that's kind of what we've got going there for the pergola.
And the conditions of the Fort Lowell Historic Zone Advisory Board, could you go over those and show us where those are, in effect? So something was the posts on the guest house?
Well, yeah, basically what happened after the previous review before, Fort Lowell wanted to see what the windows would look like next to the front door on the main house, what the door would look like, and also that the post had a base and everything else. So we met all of those requirements as well. And thank you, Jody, for pulling up the elevations. You can see here on sheet 6, the side east elevation there, you can see we've got what you're seeing there is a pergola post and also a post for the front porch of the guest house as well. And those were going to be circular, but we're making them square now to kind of, per the Fort Lowell Historic District's request to make those. And then we added little bases on each of the post bases for the guest house to help kind of add a little bit of a, anchor to them. And then the other thing they wanted to see was, as you can see there, right where Jody's cursor is, where it says new entry area, west elevation, let's see, there we go, right there. That is the That's the new entry area for the main house, and they wanted to see what the door was gonna look like. We had some glass block windows on either side of the door, and above it, we removed those and added just, single pane or a double pane, single light, narrow glass on either side of the entry, and also up above for a little clear story. And then the door is it's going to be kind of a custom wood door that we also had some photos that I attached as well. Thank you, Jody. Kind of, there you go. That's what the door is going to look like for the main house. So, because they wanted a general idea of what our design was going to be, and that's pretty close to what we want to do there.
And they had reviewed this design?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and if you could go back to the plans, Jody, is it called out that those posts are square, or is that, we're just assuming that by the way they're drawn, or?
Well, these plans I've not gone back and changed the plans since that meeting, which was last week. But we will, when I submit the plans for final review, I will just change that. There's a diameter symbol next to the 6. We'll change that to a square symbol. So, I mean, I will certainly make that change on the plans before we submit them. I just didn't want to go back and make those changes and rescan all the plans until we get our approval. And then we will definitely, that's the only thing that really needed to be added, I think, after that Fort Lowell meeting.
But they did see the picture of that door and they were fine with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they said yes. They were okay with it. I mean, they wanted a model number and everything, but it's going to be a custom door. So, but that photo was pretty accurate of what, I mean, that's what we're going to base the construction on. So.
This is Jan, didn't they say something about you had to come back if it changed, deviated from that design, if you
Yes,
couldn't
they
get
did.
that?
They
And
did.
then, I guess related to the doors, didn't they have a comment about the relief on the gates there?
Yeah, they also on the gates, they decided they didn't want the Ocotillo kind of desert scene. They wanted more of just a simple grid pattern of some kind, something, more nondescript. And it'll be, I mean, I've not had time to make those changes yet either. I just wanted to, again, I would have maybe done something had I known this meeting was happening, but to be honest with you, that email did not come to me, and thankfully my client notified me this afternoon. So, but yeah, if we're not going to do that kind of design, then we'll do something obviously that meet their requirements, which will be just a simple grid is what they asked for. And so we will do that.
Okay, commissioners, do you have questions? Who would like to begin?
This is Ricky. I don't have any questions.
Okay, Savannah?
Just trying to get a little more picture of what the pergola is. Do you have a view of that?
Well, if you go back to the elevations, that's kind of what you'll see. The best view of it will be from the elevations there. Thanks, Jody. You can see that's a view of the pergola as if you are approaching the pergola. Actually, I take that back. That's a rear view of the pergola as you're looking east. You'd be looking east. No, that's the east view of it. So you're looking more like a west view. So basically that's behind the pergola. And then let's see, there's another view because of how the buildings are joined together and stuff. That's pretty much, from both the front and the back, it'll look like that. It'll be those 3x8s there. The post on the left you see is actually a post that is part of the guest house that supports the guest house canopy. The post on the right-hand side of that elevation is the rear post. There's only one post that we need on this to support it. Otherwise, it's supported between the two buildings. And we just tried to keep it nondescript, didn't want to call a lot of attention to it. But it is kind of a traditional style of pergola, where you see like large dimension lumber, 3x8s running at 16 inches on center. And then we'll have some 1x3 tubular steel running across the top of it to help stabilize it. And that'll also add some shade. And those will be rusted. So, and then let's see if we go, you can see, let's see, if we go to if we can slide that elevation over just a little bit to the left, Jody. If you can just slide that whole sheet over to the left a little bit. There we go. So you can see the front view as you're kind of approaching the pergola. You would see that on the the front/northwest entry elevation, because that shows it, shows what the pergola looks like as it's attached to the guest house. The trouble is that, because the existing house is coming out where those dashed lines are. And so it's kind of hard to show the whole pergola in that kind of view. So that's why there's some dashed lines and some solid lines there. It's a little confusing, but orthographically, when you view it, that's how I had to draw it. And then if you look at just to the left of that, the front/north elevation shows that's kind of like, you can see the height of the pergola, which is about approximately 9 feet above grade to the underside of it, about 10'8" at the lowest, where the grade's the lowest, above to the top of it. And you can see the 3x8s running through that, you kind of see the cross-section view of those. But it's a pretty simple structure.
And thank you for that. And can you remind me, you can't see it from the street even though, right? You
Well,
can see a bit of the guest
It's
house,
going to be
but
tough.
not.
It's going to be
Yeah.
difficult to see it. You'd have to actually walk up into the driveway. If you go to the site plan on sheet 1, you'd actually have to, if you were to see it from the street, you'd actually have to come up Deborah's side area there and go around the last corner of the main house up there where the gates are going to be, and then you would actually see it.
Got it. Okay. Well, thanks. And the Fort Lowell, the previous presentation you had, you showed these drawings and explained
Yes,
it just
and
like that.
Yeah, they were okay with it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Savannah. Who else has comments?
I had a question about the door. As I remember this, when it was presented before, there was you have changed the front entry from where it originally was. And I was sort of wondering what the original front door looked like in comparison to the one that you're choosing right now.
Well, you could not see the front door anyway you'd have to actually, the front door used to be where the side entry, well, basically it was the side entry, and it was basically it was a solid wood door that had vertical ribs in it. It was a solid wood door. Didn't look historical at all. And it was basically, I mean, again, you'd have to walk into the side yard and then come around the corner to see it.
No, I was just curious, because it's not that we want it to look historic. It's new, but I was just wondering how it, the original door would have been designed to go with the house, correct? And just trying to determine how this one fits in, with this new entry, and would it be like the original door but in a new location?
No, it's
something totally, it looks like
Carol.
it's something totally different.
Carol, this is a house that was built in the 90s.
In the 90s, okay.
yeah,
All right, yeah,
Well, it
well,
was the
that's what
90s
I knew.
door.
It was not historic,
right.
but the door, I don't know, you still would want to try to keep the integrity, I would think, of the original design to some extent, so,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
well, all the work we've done, we've tried to, we're not trying to make it look like it was built in 1880.
Right,
But we're pulling some elements into it to kind of add a little more, curb appeal to it. And that's why, and plus to be able to find the door from the street is helpful. And that was the crux of this project to begin with, that and the guest house. And so, but we wanted something that the owner wanted something that, fit kind of the nuance of the historical, I mean, there's some houses in there that are kind of like Mexican urban style, with entries that are covered and interesting doors, and just that kind of hacienda / historic look, so to speak, even though, again, most of these houses were built in the 80s and 90s and 2000s.
mhm.
But yeah, the door is just basically, we wanted to make it interesting and still fit the neighborhood and add to the curb appeal of the house.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Joel, did you have anything?
Yes, I didn't, I noticed that we're considering the pergola, the gate, the front door on the main house and the windows. Did we see a picture of the windows or?
Well, we don't have a picture of the windows. I mean, basically the windows are matching what the house is. The house is, again, the house was built in the 90s and it's got pretty standard, I believe they are, they're not vinyl windows, but they're actually extruded aluminum windows. Most of them are. And they're kind of a beige color, the trim. And so we're just going to match that construction. Probably, the windows I'm not sure we'll go with the extruded aluminum because it's hard to get those to meet code requirements now, but it would potentially be a vinyl window of some kind. But again, the color will match and it's a simple, narrow style of window. And those windows are going to be around the door. Again, they're fixed, they're not operable. So they're just basically single light windows, so to speak.
Okay, thanks. That was mine. Everybody else covered the others.
Okay.
Jody, did Fort Lowell say that they wanted to do a minor review on the windows?
No,
Not after this one.
Okay, because it just doesn't seem like you're sure on the materials.
the
Well-
only, the only thing that they wanted to do a minor review on was the
The
front
door,
door if they couldn't get the
if it changed.
design, yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, Jan, did you have something?
I think I interrupted Ricky, actually. Sorry, Ricky.
That's okay. It just seems like there's a lot of kind of uncertainty about this project. It's like we don't have updated plans and you're also not sure about the windows.
Okay. May I say something? These
Well,
plans are
can we finish
updated.
with the commissioners? Let her finish her question first, please.
For-
Okay.
For the gate, so you said it's going to have a crosshatch pattern. It's still not going to be a see-through gate, correct? Like it's going to have the crosshatch pattern on top of the solid plate, or is it going to end up being see-through?
It would probably be a see-through.
Okay. And then the windows, I would just like to see, or at least have staff see to approve the windows once you figure out what material they're going to be made out of.
Well, I can show you, I mean, I have a photo of the existing windows and you can see they're gonna match them. I mean, it might not be the exact same material in terms of the frame, because again, like I said, the extruded aluminum windows they're difficult to get to actually meet code requirements now. But if you have a moment, I can actually, I don't know how I can share an image, but I could actually send Jody an email of a photo of the windows while we're chatting. I mean, I could do that within 30 seconds. And then we could pull up to see what they look like, if that would help.
Yeah, that would.
Okay, let me go to my screen here. Let's see. Jody, can you pull, I need to get to my, let's see.
And then for the pergola, so the other shade that had previously come through, that was intended for parking. Is this pergola still going to be intended for parking?
Yes, shade for parking,
Okay, but it doesn't have a flat roof, correct? Like it's gonna.
No, there's no roof. Yeah,
the
a
sun's gonna-
pergola is
okay.
an open wood structure.
I was just
Yeah.
checking on that. Thank you.
I need to get, let's see. Somehow I need to get to my screen. Can you reduce the size of this? I can't seem to get back to my screen for some reason. There we go. Thank you. Great. All right. Hang on one moment and I'm going to pull up some images and I will send them to Jody. Let's see.
Commissioners, I think we can still, in the motion, if we wish, ask that that staff review the windows when, you know, they're going to have to look at the plans anyway to ensure, and we're going to have to say that all changes have to be on the plans and reviewed by staff, obviously. So because Mr. Bond, we do like to know exactly. We don't just say it could be any material just so it looks like that. We don't do that.
Okay, well,
So just show us the pictures and.
okay. All right,
yeah.
I'm gonna send, hang on one moment. I understand. I'm going to send an email to Jody here in just a quick moment.
Terry, this is Jan. I was, for the same reasons, my only comment was just having maybe the windows and the gate be reviewed by staff since it's not really fleshed out in the plans.
Yes.
So just for clarification purposes, if that's the case, is that going to have to go through a whole new review process again, or is that like a minor review? Okay, Jody, I'm sending you, the window you'll see here is just to the left of the existing front door. So I'm sending that image to Jody right now.
No, Mr. Bond, if the motion passes with that wording, you would send Jody and Michael the pictures of, you talk to them about the door and the gate, and that would not be a minor review. And that's something you could do easily, right, Jody?
And the
Yes.
windows.
And the windows,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
If that's what commissioners wish to put in the motion. I'm just
Okay.
suggesting that. Right.
Yeah, thank you, Jody. So you can see the slot window is just to the left of that front door. And basically it's just a narrow, it's just a very narrow, for lack of a better word, it's just a very narrow style window that's got a fixed piece of glass in it. And it's a metal frame, very thin metal frame. And we would, because of the main house, we want to match what's on the main house. So we would match that exact, as close as possible to that. Based on what the manufacturers are going to have. But we're not talking about something, visually it's, unless you were a contractor, visually you would not know the difference between that window and the window in terms of the frame and stuff. There's not going to be any noticeable difference at all. It's a pretty easy kind of situation to match. I guess I could send cut sheets and everything once we pick a manufacturer. we're, you know, and then kind of go from there.
Well, that's probably what you'll do if Jody's, if staff is comfortable with just, it depends on what our motion comes out to be. We have
Okay.
not made a motion yet. So do
Okay.
you have other pictures to show us
Let's
that you
see.
sent?
I'm gonna have to see what else I have.
No, I'm good. I thought you sent a couple pictures to Jody.
No, I just sent that one. Let's see.
Are they just wanting to change it for greater visibility? Is that why they're asking for new windows? Compares to like what's
Who's
there
asking for new
already?
windows?
The
What do you
owner.
mean?
No, the windows that are there. So
Yeah.
are there, they just
Yeah,
want
the
greater
whole idea is of
visibility?
that so you can see out the front door and, you know, see to the street, and kind of the entry would like to have a kind of a welcome feel to it, as opposed to this, you know, you got to go around, you don't even know where the entry is in a main house until you walk into the side yard. I mean, there's no indication that that's the front door.
I think when we reviewed this before, there were glass blocks where you're
Yeah,
now
there
putting
were.
in wind, and we actually asked for
Right.
you to come back with a design that had
Yes.
windows in place of glass block.
Yeah, and so that's what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Jody, it's confusing how this case is listed because it should be, wouldn't it have been a continued case?
Not
Because-
actually a continued case. I mean, it's got a new HPZ number.
Jody,
And
don't
it's
you
got
have
a-
photos from Louis submitted to you that you had on your agenda that with a link to photos? It has photos of the back of the house. It has photos from the street side. And it should be noted, the door we're talking about, existing door, is not a front door. It's a side door. It's the main entrance to my house, but the street side does not currently have a door there. And in fact, there's no windows that were matching. They were all created because I'm editing a bedroom to a front entrance. So you're not matching anything.
Well, other than
Different.
maybe just other than they want them to look similar, you know, we want the windows, the new windows to look like they're part of the main house. They're not going to be like radically different in terms of color and material and things like that. I mean, they're basically to the general eye, they're going to look exactly like the existing windows. And I mean, that's the intent, because we're, you know, we want the house to, we want the new project to, you know, blend with the existing house.
Here's
So
some photos.
Oh, here we go. Great. Thank you.
The last review that was done.
and so you'll see the street side. I think somewhere in there, there's a street side. That's you can see the back of the house. That's
There we go.
okay. And then somewhere there's, I think if we scroll down, there's,
Let's scroll down.
Well, those are the street views looking, those were the ones looking east and west. And then
That was building views.
I guess just look at the building views are going to be the best that we have.
there was some other ones. I don't know.
There were.
I don't know where they are. I feel like,
Can you scroll down a little bit more? I think there's one more down there. That's okay. That's the back. Yeah.
Oh.
So
there's no. Well, there's a window. Well, okay.
yes, and see the back windows are actually a lighter color. Well, the doors and everything are a lighter color than the window frames that you see in the front. Yeah, so basically, for lack of a better term, you know, the very thin jamb and head frames for those windows, and we you know, the intention is to completely match that, not make it a unique window other than the fact it's just a window and a clear story. Two thin windows next to the door and then above it. And again, what we're talking about a house that was built in the I think, late 80s or early 90s.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have enough, do you have further questions, or do we have enough for a motion? That if someone's willing to make that? So anyone want to go over the points that might be in a motion?
It would include the motion, the, so, wait. The window, door, gate, and back pergola are being approved, but the plans need to show the modifications of the pillars being square on the pergola. The final choices for the front gate, and then the type of material that's going to be used for the windows. Is that, did I cover everything?
Commissioners, is that what you, that's what I think I had on my list.
Yeah, I think this is Jan. We don't really talk about it, but to the extent the Fort Lowell Advisory Board also mentioned topping that the square posts be rusticated and the base be topped with flagstone. And then there was also discussion of the grading and just attention to that. And I don't really personally know anything about it, but it sounds like there's concern about it being abrupt versus a gentle grade.
Well, I assured him that, you know, we're making the transition as gentle as possible. And I mean, it's not going to be abrupt. It's going to be gentle. The elevation shows it being pretty gentle. And we've got a foot difference in finished floor between the main house and the guest house. And so we have to create that transition gently, which we fully intend to do. We're not going to use rip wrap or anything like that. Just for clarification, the flagstone is only going on those two main posts that are going into the side entry of the main house, which is currently the front in the main entry. But now it'll be the side entry once we move the door to the front. But what I am showing there is flagstone on top of those 2x stucco bases before the square steel post will project through that. And the flagstone, there's already flagstone walkways, there's a flagstone porch there, and a flagstone porch in the back. And so that's why I did the flagstone there. But I do not recall us requiring the flagstone to cap the 3 post bases for the main house. I mean, for the guest house. I thought we left it at just being for the main house only.
I just was repeating what I understood Fort Lowell was asking for as part of their approval.
Maybe Jody could recap that.
Yeah, Jody, can you help me with that?
I have the text right here. It does
Okay.
say for the guest house.
Oh,
It says, well, let me read it and make sure I've got it right. Let's see, there's the conditions include that the posts on the guest house are square, rusticated, and with a base topped with flagstone.
Yeah, okay.
okay.
Anything else we need to be reminded of, Carol?
That the drainage will continue with a gentle slope, which he addressed. And that if the applicant is unable to get the design proposed for the door, they will return for a minor review.
Right. That needs to be mentioned. Or we could have it be a staff review.
Yeah, staff review. That'd be fine.
Or Jody, would you feel more comfortable so Fort Lowell wouldn't be upset to do it as a minor review? If the door materials change?
They already have that in there that they want to do it as a minor if the door changes.
But what I'm saying is we were going to possibly suggest that you deal with it. But would you rather us just agree with them and say minor review?
It's your prerogative. I can do it either way.
Okay,
Will they be upset with us if we have staff review it?
possibly. This is Fort Lowell. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. It just, I was trying to make, make it simpler. I'm very confused about why this came in as a new case, but I guess that doesn't matter.
Well,
So-
it came in, I can
I'm not
explain.
asking you, sir. I'm not asking
Okay,
you.
okay. All right.
And so we might still have the windows and the gate come in as staff review. Those were
Mhm.
kind of discussed, but silent on Fort Lowell. But
Right,
it
and then
seems that it's still worth having staff review.
And maybe the door, yeah, the door as a minor review. Okay. So who wants to go ahead and make this motion?
I can make it. I just had one additional question. So for the purposes of the door, are we approving the door as we saw in the motion? In our motion, we're just approving the door now, but if it changes again, it's then going through minor review.
I think we're approving it as shown. And if that changes from what's shown, then it needs to be a minor review. Is that what everyone else understands?
Yes.
Okay, and then what was the other question?
That was just my one question. I don't know if I had another one, but I could make it the
Okay. And then staff review for doors, no, excuse me,
the
for windows.
And the gate.
Yeah.
and the posts on the pergola to make sure that they're square with the
That's the posts on the guest house
posts on the guest house. Okay, and rusticated.
and flagstone.
Topped with flagstone.
Okay.
Or the base. topped with-
Seems like we're following Fort Lowell with the addition of staff review of the windows and gate design.
Right, yeah, the gate, we need to also address the gate.
Okay.
Okay. Are we good? Can I make it?
Go ahead.
On the matter of HPZ 22-035 5440 East Presidio. We recommend approval as presented with the following changes being added to the plans for staff approval. Square posts on the guest house being rusticated with the base topped with flagstone and the drainage continuing with a gentle slope. The changed gates to be the final gates, along with the windows showing the materials the windows will be used. If the design or materials for the doors changes, we would like them to come back for a minor review.
Did you say staff reviews for the window and gate?
I said I like approve as presented with staff ensuring that those things were on there. Was that good enough? Do I
guess
have to say staff approval?
I think that's fine. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there discussion? Okay. I'll go ahead and call roll. I vote aye on the motion. Ricky?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Joel?
Yes,
Jan?
Aye.
Savannah?
Aye.
Okay. So Jody, do you want to summarize the next steps for Mr. Bond and the owner?
So you'll have to revise the plan. Well, there'll be a decision letter that will be issued once the minutes are finalized. The decision letter will be coming from the Director of Planning Development Services. And then you will need to revise your plans for the conditions in the decision letter and resubmit those with the decision letter to Development Services. And Historic will be one of the reviewers of the revised plans at that point,
Okay.
along with anybody else, electrical, mechanical, structure, whoever else needs to review it.
And so at that time, Jody, you would review the materials for the windows and gate, or would you want to do that beforehand so we wouldn't have to revise in case you had input on those.
You're welcome, Steve. You're welcome to send them to me and Michael prior to submitting, and we can
Okay.
review that way, but we'll be also reviewing when you submit for your permit.
All right, probably what I'll do, just so that everybody's on the same page, is I'll send you a set of updated plans so you can kind of see what our intent is in terms of meeting these requirements. And then once I get some kind of feedback, then I'll, then we'll, when the owner's ready to submit for the permit, then we'll do that. Does that sound good?
Yes,
Jody?
thank you.
Okay,
Okay, great.
all right. Oh,
We'll do
thank you
that.
then. The motion passes unanimously. Good luck with the project. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so on this next case, Savannah, will you be recusing?
I will.
Okay, are you going to go ahead and leave the meeting, and then do you want us to text when it's done?
Yep, just let me know and I'll hop back on.
Do you have her phone number to text her, Terry?
I'm pretty sure I do. Let me just see.
Before we let you go, Savannah, and then we have no way to get a hold of you?
No, I'm
No,
pretty sure
she
I've done this
texted me.
before, so yeah, let me see, Savannah. Let me see. No, hold on. I'm almost 100% sure I have it, so.
I've got a thread with you on it. I can send you a little note so it goes to the top.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So I have you recusing then at 1:48. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to case 3B. This is HPZ 22036 at 2900 North Craycroft. Exterior facade repair at the commissary building and museum building. This is a full review. This is individually listed in the National Register. It's a historic landmark and we'll be using the rehabilitation standards. Jody, do you have background on the case, please?
So this project is for a couple of buildings, the commissary building and the museum buildings in Fort Lowell Park. The city of Tucson received 407 bond funds and a heritage grant to help with the work that they're doing. They presented also at the May 3rd Fort Lowell Historic Zone Advisory Board meeting. And it actually went pretty well. They had some questions, but ultimately the project was recommended for approval as presented. And it was unanimous, with the exception of one person who couldn't unmute. So there was one abstention, but otherwise it was well received. And Cookie Poster and Drew Cook are here to present.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead then, folks.
Thank you. This is Corky Poster, and I'm going to be co-presenting with Drew Cook from Poster, Murto McDonald. Just so you know, Ian Milliken and Scott O'Mac are here from the Preservation Office of Pima County. I think in the long term, Pima County and the City of Tucson will be partnering on this Fort Lowell project. So they're, I want to just recognize they're here as guests to review the process. We put together a presentation, short presentation on kind of the background of the project and background of the fort. So with your patience, I'd like to go ahead and go through that. On the left is the commissary, on the right is the last July, the Fort Lowell Museum on the east side of Craycroft. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through a quick project background. Some of you may know a lot about this. Some of you may know less about it. So I wanted to get everyone up to speed on the project. Next, please. Many of you know that that Fort Lowell was built in 1873 as part of the movement of Camp Lowell from downtown to the east side of Tucson. Next, please. The two buildings we're going to be looking at are on opposite sides of the parade ground. In the northwest corner, circled in red, is the original format of the commissary of the fort. On the bottom central is officers' quarters number 5, which was no longer there and was reconstructed in the late 60s, early 70s. The fort also, the commissary was also a ruin at the closure of the fort in 1891. And that was reconstructed as well in the late 1940s on a more substantial adobe base. Next, please. One of my favorite photographs of the fort, looking at the officers' quarters in the back behind the cannon. Next, please. At the end of the closure, when Fort Lowell was closed, it was abandoned by the U.S. Army and fell into disrepair and was scavenged to a large part for building materials. And so the fort was quite a mess of raw adobe at the end of 1891. Next, please. Poster Murto McDonald, back then Poster Frost Murto, was commissioned to do a full-blown master plan of Fort Lowell Park, and especially focused on Zone 1, which was the historic parade ground. This is kind of a bird's eye rendering of what we're intending that to look like. You'll notice that of the 6 officers' quarters, one is in the middle of Craycroft, that the Fort Lowell Museum is significantly out of alignment from the other buildings. I'll go through the reasoning for that. But we're in the process of restoring and essentially recreating that parade grounds. This is some work that we did several years ago, where we did a rehabilitation of officers' quarters number 3, which is in pretty decent shape, and officers' quarters number 1 and 2 were ruins. And we did what we referred to then as ghost structures, where we built protective shade structures over those ruins that was also reminiscent of the original shape of the building. Next, please. I'm going to go into a little more detail on the commissary and talk a little bit about what the scope of work is. Next, please. The commissary storehouse was occupied by families of Refugio Martinez and Ricardo Ochoa, among others, who called it the comisario. So it was occupied after the closure of the fort. Next, please. And then it has quite a different history. Sometime prior to 1942, Ambus Earhart became the owner of the property. It was then later acquired by the Bolsius family. And then in the late 1940s, the family rehabilitated the structure. You could argue that they reconstructed the building using the original adobe walls and rebuilding others on top of the original foundation. The rehabilitation was into 5 separate apartments, 3 along the south wing and 1 in either of the remaining wings. Charles Bolsius moved into one of the units by the mid-1950s. They stayed in the commissary until at least 1980. Next. And you can see what the condition was when the Bolsius family took over. There wasn't a lot to the building. This is, you might recognize the well, which is still there. So this is looking southeast at one of the remaining buildings of the commissary. Next. You can see from these photographs that when Bolsius family took over, they largely had to rebuild the building on top of the remaining adobe walls, and some portions of it were not rebuilt. Next, please. They rebuilt the building in kind of reminiscent of a Santa Fe style. So the building did not look like this when it was the commissary, but it was done in the late 40s. And since then, it has acquired its own historic significance on the fort. And so we are continuing to respect the existing characteristics of the commissary as it is in place now. Next. It's an aerial view of what that site looks like. You can see that part of that opening between the eastern and western building is, that building is gone. There's a little courtyard in the corner, and you can see a shadow of the northern extension at the west, which had a full root cellar in addition to a building above that. That root cellar is still intact and in that location. You can see also that the site is substantial, and one of the valuable assets of this site going ahead in the future is the ability to use some of that remaining open space for activities and events and other Fort Lowell related activities. Next, please. So this is what the configuration of the buildings look like. We were hired some years back to look at the possible reuse of the building and came forward with several alternatives, none of which were rental units, but rather a more public use, perhaps with one caretaker's cottage. That final use has not been decided upon, and ultimately I suspect we'll be back to this commission and the PRS in the future. We talk a little bit more about what the future uses of the building will be. Next, please. This shows that northern extent of the building and what the potential of that outdoor space might be. Next, please. We also did a detailed existing conditions report. I haven't included the whole thing, but if you go to the next slide, we found the building to be in moderate shape, a lot of adobe damage, a lot of plaster damage on the exterior of the building. You look in the top right, you can see raw adobe exposed in the wall, and you can see some of the cracking and problems with the exterior adobe. Next, please. Also some basal coving happening at the bottom with some rising damp, and also some animal damage, and also some damage to the concrete slabs that exist outside on the north side of several of the buildings. Next. But generally the building's in good shape. Those slabs I said are not great. The windows are in good shape. We're going to be doing some repainting and scraping of the windows, but putting them back to exactly the way they were. Next, please. And here you can see that exterior area as well. Next. In contrast, the interior is in really lovely shape. It's, floors are great, the walls are great, the doors, windows, all of the interior of the building is really in excellent condition, and we're doing no work on the interior of the building as part of this scope, and ultimately we'll not be doing a lot of work on the interior building as it moves forward to some other alternative uses. Next. But there are some problems with the building. The roof is not in good shape. Here are some details from our report. And so the scope of work that Drew will go over in a bit includes substantial improvements to the roof, make sure the building doesn't leak. Next. Let me have Drew walk through this. Is the full exterior rehabilitation set for the project. Drew, please go through these.
Hi, how are you doing? Drew Cook. So this is the site plan, which we've already kind of gone through. We've dissected the building sort of in three different terms. So we've got the western single unit, we're calling the single unit. We've sort of got this bar with the multiple apartments in it, we're calling the multiple unit. And then this is sort of the north bar that runs along Craycroft. So we were brought on by the city, and it's sort of a design build where they've already hired Durazo, who's a jock with the city. And our scope of work was to sort of draw everything up and communicate what was to be done and the process in which it is to be done. This is the demo plan of the roof. And what we've determined is that this westernmost unit, the single unit, has pretty severe damage on the roof and some termite damage inside. So the plan is to remove all of the roof and the roof decking, provide insulation as needed, as we're kind of unclear the structure and how it's built inside, then to put new decking on and re-elastomeric the entire roof, along with adding crickets as needed to some of the places where the water's not draining properly. And I'd like to note that this shed roof on the far westernmost edge is one of the metal roofs that Corky had shown in a previous slide. And our plan is to remove all of the metal roofs because we've realized that none of them are actually on a deck and they're just nailed straight to the joists. And when we replace them, we're just going to replace them with wood decking and elastomeric coat roof coating on there. And then as you can see in here too, there's there's 5 swamp coolers that are currently existing. Some of them are rotted out, some of them may be functional, but we've decided that we're going to remove the swamp coolers and infill their penetrations on the walls with adobe and plaster over them, as they are sort of an access point for animals, water, and insects. Over here on the multi-unit, for the most part, this roof is intact and in good shape. I believe the contract with Durazo is calling for it just to be re-elastomeric coated and, patched up. And there's one spot right over here on, I guess I'll call that the eastern patio, which has leaking and roof damage. And the plan is to cut back the roof deck to the joist and replace it and recoat this entire roof. As for this northern bar, this was the main building that had the metal roof. And so we're going to remove all of that again, add the appropriate insulation needed as we don't know what's underneath, and put back a wood deck with elastomeric coated roof. See here. And just so as Corky had made it clear, we're not touching anything on the interior of the buildings. They're actually incredibly beautiful and in good shape. There is some concern about the slabs, particularly this slab on the single unit is failing, and because animals have dug under it, it's caused pretty severe cracking. So this is one of the alternate bids, is to remove this slab and re-pour it. It is not original. It's just a gray slab. And the thing I would like to note in here is that all of these porches along here, as you see me move the mouse, they all have a blue lime plaster finish on the interior, which we don't know when it was added, but it is one of the historic defining characteristics. And we have no intention on doing any work to the plaster in terms of replacing it or replacing it. There is one patching on the single unit that the basal coving is failing, and we intend to replace that. Changes. So on the exterior of the building, we're working with David Ubetta, who was sort of the lead person over at Tumacockery, and we've walked him through the whole building, and he's sort of analyzed it and realized that probably 80% of the entire building is cement plaster, and that it originally was done with cement plaster. And then over the years, it has sort of this patchwork of cement plaster, lime plaster, cement plaster, which I think has led to some of the damage you've seen where the plaster has fallen off. Durazo has procured rustic adobe, who's going to be doing the work. And they've kind of identified some of the areas in which are failing. And their plan is to go along and kind of knock along all of the exterior plaster and determine whether or not it needs to be taken off or if it's salvageable. And then they're going to remove it. And then we've decided to replace the majority of all the new work will be done with a lime plaster with a small percentage of cement in it, where previously most of the building is cement plaster. And we're doing this in terms to keep with the historic characteristics of the building, as well as the lime plaster allows the adobe to breathe, which, hopefully over time will prevent less cracking. And then this is sort of the elevations of the main building, or the main two buildings. And something to note here is this section here, which we call the North Bar, this entire elevation, I'm gonna guess 10 years ago, had been redone with cement plaster. And I think they stripped it and then replastered it. And this section here and the tail end of the building are in the best shape of the entire, building. We have no intentions on taking it off, but what we will do is with the finished coat of lime plaster, we will go over the cement plaster to give the whole building a monolithic appearance. The worst condition in the whole building is along Craycroft, which is this elevation. And in this area where there's a courtyard, didn't mean to change that. Where there's a courtyard, the entire plaster has fallen off and it's raw adobe exposed. And one of the things that we've identified with the city is that there is no drainage inside of this courtyard. So the only site work that we will be performing is to build a small French drain in the center of the courtyard. And we can get under this wall because it's a very small footing. And we're gonna pull a 3-inch PVC pipe through this wall to drain into this garden that's a good foot below the building. That is here on this view. So you can see inside here, this is kind of a garden patio and the water has no access to get out. There's a small cement slab here. And so our intention is just to dig the shallowest hole that we can, run a 3-inch pipe in there, fill it full of gravel, and just have it drain out to the garden on the eastern side.
Before we go on to this next section, I just wanted to mention that the metal roofs that Drew was talking about have two characteristics. One is they're really not visible. They're very, very low slope and therefore not visible from any of the views of those, and they're already coated in white. I know that might be a question. I just wanted to clarify that before we.
Corky, I forgot one thing too. Part of the scope of work is to reseal or oil all of the wood, the exposed wood. So that's the lintels, the bulbous doors, and any exposed wood that's on the patios. And we're going to use a 50-50 turpentine linseed oil mix, which is what's been used on the building previously. As well as that, the scope of work just calls to have all of the existing painted windows to be wire brushed and repainted with a matching exact paint.
Thanks, Drew. I just wanted to cover one other thing that we're doing on the commissary. Included in our scope of work for the improvements to the roof and the plaster and the slabs and the doors and windows, we're also asked to prepare a schematic design of the potential improvements of the landscape area north of the building. And we did two things relative to that. We did a full assessment of the landscape material itself, working with Logan Simpson. We studied the condition of all of the plants. This is just an excerpt from that, but it's a longer report moving forward. So we first wanted to understand what that historic landscape looks like and what that plant material looks like and what its condition is. Next, please. And then working together, we came up with a landscape plan for that area so that it could be a usable asset to this building in the future. We really feel strongly that the building is not the only asset, but the open space that could have great public use is also an asset. And this is the plan put forward for that. We're retaining as many of the plant materials that we can in the natural state, referring to that landscape assessment as we do it. In the middle of your screen, 3.1, that large mesquite tree is dead. It sits in a planter. And so we would ultimately replant the largest specimen mesquite tree that we could get. This is a schematic design. And so we're not asking for review and approval at this time, although we certainly welcome comments. But if and when this landscape plan moves forward or some variation on it, we will come back to both the Fort Lowell folks and to the PRS committee for that. I just want to give you a heads up at what our thought was. You'll see also that for now, we're anticipating putting a safety fence around the root cellar and also clearing the mesquite trees that are growing at the bottom of that. Just kind of a preview of what might be happening. We thought we might have a chance to do that. Next, please. And there's a companion document called the Vegetation Management Plan, which is really the index to all of those numbers that you saw earlier. So 2.0 and 2.1, all of those keynotes are then key to this vegetation management plan that explains our intent in all those areas. Again, this is schematic design, not for construction, and we will come back at some later point. Next. The other half of our work was to look at the Fort Lowell Museum, which had previously been run as a museum by the Arizona Historical Society. They are no longer running that, and the plan, as I understand it, is for the Presidio Trust to move into that museum. But before that can happen, there's some work that has to be done. Next. I will remind you that this is entirely a reconstruction. It's approximately 17 feet further north than officers' quarters number 5 that was here before, which is a little bit of a dilemma because all the other ones line up and this one doesn't. And also the Cottonwood Lane is displaced by that same 17 feet, although the Cottonwood Lane, cottonwoods north of the museum are in many cases quite well grown. And so that's something that we'll deal with in the future. But for now, our intent is to make the repairs that were caused by the extraordinary monsoons that we had last July, which resulted in the collapse of one of the walls of the building. To remind you, and you'll see in a minute what I mean, this is a concrete block structure with a raw adobe veneer on top of that, which is a bit problematic, which is why so much of that adobe was on the ground after the monsoons. Next, please. This shows some of the pre-monsoon condition of the building. You can see that there's damage all around and cracking and substantial erosion of the raw adobe. Next. And that's also true in what we call the kitchen structure, which is to the rear of that building. And where Drew is pointing right now is where the worst conditions occurred and where the collapse occurred in July. Next slide. So this is what that looked like. You can see crystal clearly here that we have a masonry structure, a concrete block, concrete masonry unit structure with a poorly adhered adobe veneer that after 50 years worth of water intrusion and deterioration finally let go. The reason in that first photograph you saw the tenting of the structure is we were trying to limit the additional damage for safety reasons moving forward. Next. And so we've been charged with essentially re-veneering the adobe, the reconstructed officers' quarters number 5 that will continue to serve as a Fort Lowell museum with the Presidio Trust. And Drew will go through the construction document showing how we intend to do that.
All right, here we have the museum and then what we call the kitchen on the southern half, and it runs along Craycroft here and in on San Francisco Boulevard, which takes you into the park. The scope of this work that we intend to do is to remove all of the raw adobe on the exterior of both buildings to expose the CMU block. We're going to remove the roof deck and the joists along with the lintel attached to the building on the museum. We intend to leave the posts as well as the beam along the exterior, which are perfectly fine. But what we're going to do is replace the lintel as well as the joists with stronger members. There is some talk that we may remove the top parapet brick, but we don't know its attachment and whether or not, it's how badly damaged it is. So that's left in question on the scope, as you can see here. We have it identified, but I think Durazo thinks that they can salvage it. Another part of the scope is to salvage all the windows, but to maintain them, because every one of the windows actually extrudes about a foot out from the CMU block because it has this adobe veneer. And so they're going to, again, sand and wire brush those and repaint them. Here is the scope of new work that we intend to do. So no work on the interior of the building, but we will be using a stabilized adobe masonry unit, and that will be stabilized with concrete, as well as the mortar used will have concrete in it. And I think it will be anywhere from 5 to 10% concrete. So it will still look like adobe. It'll still sort of weather over time, but not extensively as it did previously. As for the patio, we will be putting new joists. I believe the joists are 2x6s, which are bigger than what's identified there. The new lintel will be attached in a more secure manner to the CMU, and then it will be buried underneath the new raw adobe. As you can see, this hatch mark around the south part of the museum and all around the kitchen, there's been extensive damage from, I guess we call them prairie squirrels. But they have just dug a multitude of holes, and some of the reasons that the damage is so bad on the buildings is that the soil has sort of built up against the raw adobe, and it's not against the concrete foundation anymore. Again, here's just some of the elevations and how we intend to put it back together exactly how it is. We have canales, we have 2 downspouts on the museum, and then the kitchen has quite a few other downspouts. And then here's some of the attachment details where we intend to put a new lintel and new joist members. And then the key thing that we're doing here is we will be attaching new Simpson tie anchors that are mechanically attached to the CMU and that will mechanically be embedded into the layers of mortar every 2 feet on center. So, we don't intend the new concrete or stabilized adobe to fail, but this is just an added security to what we're doing. And then the final scope of this is that we will be running 2 new home run electrical lines to the buildings. And this is just a code thing to bring the building up to code for its new tenants that may move into the museum. But just so you know, we're pulling from a transformer that's by the crosswalk at Craycroft and then attaching it to the building. This will be all exterior work, so it'll just re-tie into the existing panels. Here are some examples of the stabilized adobe. Again, this will be concrete stabilized and not asphalt. And we're just including these so that you have a visual idea of what that'll look like and how it will represent the previous.
Just 2 other things before we go to comments from PRS. Number 1 is that Drew's comments about the coping at the top of the wall with burnt adobe. We're going to try to save those, but if we can't save individual portions of that, we're going to replace it with like. So there will be that same coping at the very top of that wall, that cap, whether it's the original or an identical replacement, if we can't physically save each one of those. And then the other, just reminder that the electrical lines coming from the transformer will be underground and not overhead.
Okay, thank you, Corky and Drew. I wanted to start with Jody. Could you Could you recap Commissioner Scoville's question about the root cellar so we can just get that out there and so we don't forget it?
Oh, yes. He just wanted to know, it wasn't a specific question. I think it was more like, are you doing any work with the root cellar or plans to rehab the root cellar?
Jody, I can answer that question. In this scope of work, no, we're not touching the root cellar. The reason we showed you the redevelopment of the outdoor space north of the building is because that was in our scope of work in a schematic way as part of the construction documents that we're doing for the buildings themselves. So there's a fair amount more money in Proposition 407 that will be used on site, and this will go on for the next several years. So there'll be lots of chances to talk about that. But in our current scope of work, we are not touching the cellar at all.
But didn't you show that there was a retaining wall or some kind of wall put around it?
Not in the scope. That was
in the schematic?
That was in the schematic, and that was just signaling how we might approach that in the future. But that was just an indication and not part of the scope of work.
But I guess my thought is, so the feature does, people have awareness of it, so it will be dealt with in the future.
Yes, absolutely.
It won't be built or, okay. My second point was that I believe that you are going to go to the Historic Landscape Subcommittee in a week or so to talk about the landscaping plan. Is that correct? Jody, is that the Fort Lowell group that Steve Grady was referring to?
No, that's not.
Okay.
The one that Steve was referring to has to do with the pony field that's over there.
So, maybe in the future, that would be a good thing to go to Historic Landscapes if it's still around after the commission separation. So let's begin with questions. And just to remind you, our agenda item is the exterior facade repair at these two buildings, the commissary building and the museum building, right? So commissioners, you have questions? Who'd like to start? Carol?
I do not have any questions. It was a very thorough presentation. I really don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. Joel?
I just have one clarification. I apologize for not knowing. What is the local Fort Lowell Historical Association, the local board that's reviewed this? What's it called?
The Fort Lowell Historic Zone Advisory Board.
Okay, and they were completely on board, as I understand it, correct?
Correct.
And there was no hesitation on any of these plans?
No, I had a couple of questions like about the roof material and stuff like that, but generally they were all on board with it.
And that brings me really to because there was talk on the roof materials of elastomeric coating over. Can you explain that what that specifically is? It sounds like the stuff you just paint up there with a roller. Is that what's going up there, or the elastomeric?
It depends on the condition of the roof. If the roof is in excellent condition, as some of it is, then it was essentially redoing the elastomeric thick acrylic covering over that. And that occurs in some places. In some places, we are going down to the original joist, putting new plywood decking, a new built-up roof, and then an elastomeric on top of that. So the treatment of the roof depends, Joel, on the different current conditions of the many different sections of roof that already exist.
Oh, okay. Actually, that was my question, because I wondered if you meant that there was going to be a buildup and then elastomeric, but it may be a combination. I understand now. Thank you.
Thanks. Jan?
I don't have any specific questions. I really appreciate how thorough and complete the various aspects of the presentation are. And yeah, my only comment was similar to Terry's, hoping that at some point in the future, as it's applicable, that you go to Historic Landscape Subcommittee on with the Historic Landscape Plan and the Vegetation Management Plan. But thank you, and thanks for the heads up on that.
Great, thank you, Jan. Ricky?
I just have a maintenance question. So on the museum building, because it's partially concrete, is gonna need like the type of maintenance that typically Adobe gets, or is it gonna be fine? Just like you're just gonna build it once and then it's gonna sit and it'll be okay because it has that cement in it.
The answer to your question is yes. That cement stabilized adobe is a very durable material and should require no maintenance for many, many, many years.
Okay, perfect. That was the only question I had. Thank you for the really thorough presentation, including the history in it. I appreciate it.
Great. Anything else, commissioners, or would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
In the matter of HPZ 22-036, 2900 North Craycroft, exterior facade repairs at the commissary building and the museum building. I propose that we approve as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
This is Ricky. I'll second.
Okay, is there further discussion? Okay, if not, I'll go ahead and call roll. I vote aye. Ricky?
Aye.
Jan?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Joel?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously 5-0, and I'm noting that Commissioner McDonald has recused. So she did not vote.
Thank you so much.
Oh, great,
you.
thank you for this
Thank
great,
you very much.
this great presentation. Great, thank you again.
Thank you.
You.
Okay, I am going to need to recuse from 4A. And so what I'm going to do is get off and say that I recused at 2:28. And Jody, if you would text me when you're done, and I'll go ahead and text Savannah to come back on. Okay, so Jan, you'll be going ahead and sharing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And I'll see you when you're done.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
And do we have everybody here? So this is HPZ 20-061, which is a change of condition, the demolition of the pump house located next to Stone Avenue underpass. And we reviewed this at our last meeting and are now going to be hearing back, I believe, from staff who met with stakeholders, and we'll be talking more specifically about the plans. Jody, is there anything you want to say about this before we have them present?
No, we should make note that Savannah is now back and it's 2:29 that she returned.
Thank you.
Jen Toothaker is here from the Department of Transportation and Mobility, as is David Burbank. And they have points to talk about, and I'll share the screen for you, Jen.
Thank you. I'm using my cell phone also. Please bear with me if there are any technical difficulties. I've asked Jody to share notes that we took. We conducted an on-site meeting. Commissioners Ken Scoville and Ricky Riojas were in attendance. And it was myself and David Burbank, Jody Brown, and members from the Downtown Links construction team that are busy at work on the construction of the Downtown Links project generally. We met at the Stone Avenue Pump House and began discussion around its needed removal and timeline. We did have information from our Downtown Links construction team about costs related to the removal options. So again, the pump house absolutely must be moved. The option that really is not on the table is the complete demolition and no preservation of the structure. What we're really looking at are, one of the proposals was saw cutting the pump house into various pieces to be able to remove from site and store elsewhere until we were ready to maybe relocate it in a more meaningful way. And another option was to just keep the building, the structure intact. And actually, oops, I think we just went to your Outlook, Jody. Yeah, thank you so much. So as you'll see on the screen, the notes here, we have some preliminary estimates on the cost, and it's actually less expensive to do the full relocation of the structure because of the saw cutting. Doing more saw cutting drives up the cost. We discussed if we were to relocate the structure, what some options for different sites were. And again, the Downtown Links construction team and the project manager, David Burbank, were very creative in coming up with another location. And if we go to the next page, you'll see that there's where the orange is the pump house current location. The proposal is to move the structure from that site across the street to the north and west next to the Citizens Warehouse building. And if we go to the next page, we'll have a little bit better images, although I'm sorry, it's not the best pictures, but I tried to highlight in yellow very roughly. This is nowhere near a designer quality image, but where the yellow outlines are is roughly about where the pump house would go with, and I think our discussions are kind of measuring the space next to the building. It would be putting the narrow end up against Citizen Warehouse with the door facing towards where the fence is right now. So that is the consideration that's that we're really investigating right now. Honestly, the commitment to preserve the structure has pretty much been stated, and I think we're just looking for the confirmation of the funding for that. That's where we're just waiting for basically count number level commitment and thumbs up from our director team and city manager's office. There's a lot of energy behind this option. It serves many purposes. Future reuse of the structure could allow it to be, as was proposed by the first private group that reached out to us to do the relocation. They were proposing to maybe reuse the structure as a bike pump house. That's still something that could happen with this location. It's important to note is that on the bottom right image, that's looking north, where they are in the process right now of building a deck bridge, and that will be a 9th Avenue bike boulevard. So it's actually a great location for like a mobile bike repair, station or something along those lines. Additionally, it's also something that potentially could be, once it's in our in that location, our real estate office could look to see if there is a market demand for that structure, and it's possible that it could be reused by others for new use. So those are all things that kind of can be decided more once we actually move the structure. That's the most pressing issue right now. And as what we're aware of from the construction team is that removal of the structure needs to happen really before at the end of May for early July or early June. So that's what we are currently working in within the time frame. That's it for my update to you. If you have any questions, both I and David and Jody maybe can help.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
I would like, this is Carol Griffith. I'd like to comment that I think this is a good idea, and I'm very pleased that you have found an alternative to demolition or cutting the building in half, which apart, that just didn't seem like a very good idea to me. But and I just want to thank you for your continued commitment to trying to save this property and find an alternative location for it and save it as a whole. So just thank you.
Thank you. And I just really want to give much respect to David Burbank and his crew for coming up with the creative ideas.
Anyone else? Joel?
This is Ricky. I don't have
Oh,
any
Ricky.
comments.
Yeah, this is Joel. So this looks like a great idea to me. Can you trip me through the process a little bit from the sawing out to getting it to that location? What happens in the meantime? Are we storing it somewhere, and if so, where? And can you just flesh out that whole sequence for me? Because this is great. I just
It's going to be
how we're going to accomplish it. Yeah.
correct. Yeah. So the fencing that's there, and David, please, I don't mean to speak for you. If you would want to speak on this, please let me know.
Sure, I'll jump in, Jen. So May 23rd is the date that we're going to close 6th Street at Church on the west end, 7th Avenue on the east end. Preferably, the contractor would like to package up the structure, brace it up, cut the floor, and put it on a trailer and transport it to this location. Leave the support on it, and then we place it by the building that way. And then we need to secure the door and the window. Plus, we got to tackle the roof. The roof has got a big square opening in it and several small holes in the roof. So we have to patch those or provide a makeshift roof. But the thought would be just to store it there until something's decided on how to use it or reuse it. And then at that point, whoever undertakes the reuse, they can apply for the permits, pour the floor for it, figure if they need to use the window or not, where the door will be, things like that. But it'll be packaged and they can orient it the way they like to. And we thought about pouring a floor and then setting it on the floor, but then permit issue came up and we're not sure if we're going to have to go through the permit process and then the costs involved for that. And then the other issue is the use. We don't know if there's going to be water that needs to come in, electric, sewer, things like that. So we just decided to leave it packaged, place it there, and then once the use is decided, then all those steps can be taken at that point.
Oh, okay. If I can just follow up. So the location we're showing here is possibly not the permanent location, but the
as far as the current construction team is tasked, that would be the permanent location. And the neat thing about this is right about where the rocks are, just west of where the building would be, is the new 9th Avenue multi-use path. It's coming from downtown. It's going to come right by this little building, continue on to the deck plaza. And the deck plaza, the north end of that is going to be a neat little area that's going to have amphitheater, an art piece, benches, a couple picnic tables. It's going to be a pretty area that this is going to be in once we complete the Downtown Links project. And the intent would be to leave it there because property is the cities, the building is the state's. So everything kind of falls into place. I've touched base with real estate with the city. They're okay with this location. It'd be a shame to start looking for another place to put the building. But it'll be in a fence mobile, so because the packaging will still be on it.
Excellent.
And
All right.
to
Thanks so
your
much.
point, your earlier question, Joel, it will sit during the construction time frame, so it will not be opened. As David was saying, it'll be secured and sit for potentially a year before we really begin looking at an active reuse.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Savannah, did you have any questions or comments?
No questions, just that I appreciate the effort, and I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Right. Are we ready to kind of talk about what the motion would look like? And does anybody have any thoughts about that, or ready to take a lead on a motion?
I was going to ask about that. So we need a motion to approve the move to the new location. Is that the?
Yeah, and I was going to go back to how Jen was describing it, but I can't remember if it's like moving the whole building or something to distinguish it from the piecing, the carving up of the building. So I think relocating the entire building to the Citizens Warehouse location or something like that. Would you say relocate the whole? Yeah.
So the building relocation would be minus the floor. The floor,
Right.
got two
Yeah.
steps, and it would be just the
Right.
four walls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I can take a stab at it. In the matter of HPZ 20-061, I move that we approve the moving of the Stone Avenue Underpass Pump House to relocate it next to the Citizens Warehouse, minus the floor, and keep it packaged in that location until an adaptive reuse can be identified.
Is there a second?
Joel, second.
Any discussion? Guys, ready to vote? Ricky?
Aye.
Savannah?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Joel?
Yes.
And I vote aye. Thank you very much. And it's great to see the progress on this and to know it's going to be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Jody. Thanks, David.
Yep. Thank you, Jody.
So I guess we're ready for Terry, huh?
I'm texting her.
Okay.
Hey, guys, that was very expeditious. So I returned at 2:46 p.m. Okay. So we're on item 4B, HPZ 041 IID 20-04 at 340 North 6th Avenue. This is an event tent replaced with exterior pickleball courts. Corbett shell to temporarily house indoor pickleball courts, removal of parking canopy and right-of-way, metal building color change, and modification to on-site parking. This is a full review at in the Warehouse National Register Historic District. It's a contributing resource. We use the rehabilitation standards. Jody, could you give us some background on this, please?
I will actually pass that over to Maria Gayoso, a
Okay.
principal planner with PDSD who oversees the IID section.
Excellent. Hello, Maria.
Hi, good afternoon, Ms. Majeski, members of the PRS. Yeah, this is a request to modify the existing design package that was approved by the PDSD director back in June of 2021. The applicant is coming back for several modifications in the Corbett block that include adding the new commercial recreation uses, the indoor pickleball courts, 2 of them indoors inside the existing historic Corbett building, utilizing the open warehouse floor plan in the building. Just as a reminder, the Corbett building rehabilitation was a separate review process, so it's not part of this review right now. The other modification is the addition of the 3 outdoor pickleball courts next to the Corbett building. The parking canopy on the east side of the project for the proposed restaurant, that parking canopy was on the 5th Avenue right of way, so they have removed that one. And there's a new canopy now with columns that have changed materials from wood to steel. There's a new outdoor seating area for this one restaurant. Now the new outdoor seating area is gonna be also on the right of way on 7th Street. There's also, you know, modifications to the colors of the restaurant. And in terms of the parking spaces, with now the new reconfigurations increasing the number from 181 to 184. The applicant still intending to remove this surface parking area and replace it in the future with mixed-use development. Also, the indoor pickleball courts inside the Corbett building are also temporary. The future use of the Corbett building still planned for food service use. The city design professional reviewed this application, this request for modification of the design package back in April and have recommended approval. And that's all I have. I understand the applicant from Foresight Architecture is here present for a presentation. And if you have any other questions, I would like to pass the microphone to him.
Okay, thank you. And Miguel, is that you presenting?
Yeah. This is Richard with Foresight Architecture. Miguel and I are both going to present. Hopefully you guys can hear me because my camera just stopped working. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation, and then Miguel's going to chime in with some comments afterwards. So I'm going to
thank you, staff. Thanks for everyone being here and reviewing our project.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to share my screen right now. Right, so what I'm going to do here is hopefully everybody can see my screen right now. You should be seeing a aerial view with the site outline. And we put together a quick presentation. We're going to take you just briefly through the proposal for the last IID to refresh everyone's memory, and for people who might not have been a part of that presentation to bring them up to speed. And then we'll kind of segue into the changes that we're going to make. So again, the red dashed area is the entire site, and the yellow are the buildings that were on the site. Some of them have been removed. This building right here is the historic Corbett building that's remaining. These other structures have been removed already. Again, for a refresher, this is aerial view of Tucson, and this area down here is the area that we're working with. Parking lot in the back, and some buildings along the north edge. This piece right here, historic Corbett building, we were adding a patio dining just east. We were adding an event tent east of that. There's an area that is a sort of public space to as amenity to the restaurant. We would have games and eating in here. This is a new restaurant called Love Burger, and this is the previous sort of covered takeout area that is indeed in the right of way. We're going to take a look at, go down to street level. We're going to look, kind of looking into the previous proposed area via this indicator. Previously, we were going to build this covered patio. There was going to be a restaurant inside the corporate building, and this was going to be the patio for the restaurant. Looking back here at the main point of entry to the sort of public part of the project, we have, this is pieces of the existing wall. We were proposing to add some signage and some entry gates. This would be a main point of entry for the public portion of the project. Kind of moving further in to look at the adjacent, the new building, the Love Burger. It's a kind of open courtyardy area, open patios, amenity to the restaurant. Moving to the very end, the last view, looking at the previous covered takeout, looked like this. This was a wood structure, and there was the building kind of had a sort of faux graffiti look to it. These were our previous colors and the previous wood structure that we were proposed. You'll see as we move forward, I'm going to back up to that just a second, back up to that view. The reason for the changing to a wood structure is because once we started construction, it turns out there's a tremendous amount of utilities here. Sorry about that, guys. Running right through here and running right here where the posts were. We had sewer lines, we had water lines, we had gas lines. It was proving too complicated to get our foundation in. So we modified the structure to go to a single column. And for that, we needed to go to steel. And then we modified the roof since we were changing the supports to be steel. But you'll see that, Maria mentioned that in a brief, and you'll see that as we get further in the presentation. So again, jumping back to the overall view, this was a more planned view. Again, just to catch everybody up to speed, this is the covered parking area over here that we were talking about, covered takeout. This is the previous building. This is the public area. All this stuff remains the same. Changes that we're proposing that you'll see next, this event tent, we're changing this area. We are proposing to change this kind of and the takeout canopy for the what was previously a restaurant. This is our previous site plan as was presented in the development plan with 181 parking spaces. This was a previous landscaping plan. You can see the landscape fully all the way around the project. So kind of jumping back to where we, again, refresh, this is where we were before. And this is where we're making our pivot to. So this is the, again, existing historic building. This rendering is a little more embellished than the previous one, but this existing historic building is being refurbished right now, and there are no changes to the outside. We have proposed some changes to the inside. The primary change that Maria mentioned in terms of the outdoor area is this area where the event tent previously was. We would like to propose to put these outdoor pickleball courts, and we'll explain a little further as we go. The idea being that there was a bunch of gaming going on in this restaurant, bocce ball and cornhole, things like that. This is basically an amenity, you know, to the restaurant, sort of a larger gaming area. This is a pickleball is becoming very popular, and the kind of folding of this into a kind of commercial aspect is a interesting thing going on right now, and we think it's a good fit for our project. Looking at it,
I'm going to jump in there and talk about the courts a little bit. One of the reasons pickleball has been selected, Richard, you get it. One of the reasons owners really want to do pickleball. Sorry,
I don't even know how to mute myself when in the middle of this presentation, Miguel.
Okay. Sorry for the echo, guys. Richard and I sit right near each other. So pickleball is an interesting phenomenon in that it has a all-day use to it, and they've studied it pretty closely. It's multi-generational, and there's an early use, you know, that starts as early as 8 in the morning that runs about 8 to, you know, noon, and then there's another use that's about noon to 2, and then there's an afternoon use, and then there's a use that kind of jumps in, you know, from that 4 o'clock into that, you know, 8 o'clock, 8 or 9 o'clock. And so they've really studied it really closely because of its, it attracts, you know, quite a few, you know, age groups, you know, over 40, over 60 age groups, you know, before 1 o'clock, and then, you know, a really mixed age group after. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you. Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, so moving back to that slide, we're looking at a plan view. Again, the 3 outdoor pickleball courts, and then you'll notice the addition of the restaurant. We're proposing a change from the previous use, which would have been a restaurant inside the historic Corbett building. And what ended up happening with that was the restaurant, we were proposing a high-end restaurant, had become uneconomically viable at this point in time. There's still plans to turn this into a restaurant eventually. What we were pivoting to now was to refurbish the shell of the building just so that the site was complete, but the inside was going to remain empty until we could build out the restaurant some years down the line. And then with the addition of this pickleball project, it was determined to be very easy to put a couple of courts on the inside so that there could be some conditioned play. And it would be very minimal impact to the building. What you're looking at here is the 2 courts, and everything you're seeing is furniture basically. So therefore, it would be very easy for us to change this out in the future, and minimal effort and cost to put this inside the building at this point in time, just as an expanded use. Jumping back to kind of the overall vision again, and we're going to show you the revised street level views similar to what we saw previously. This is standing down street level, looking back towards the Corbett building, and you know, this is ultimately the way that the building will look. This is the color scheme that we've worked out. What you're looking at, these planters along here, we don't, you know, that's in the right of way. That's just kind of shown for embellishment purposes. That's not really in this project right now. We would have to pursue some kind of a patio, you know, sidewalk use with a patio in the right of way. That this is just kind of to show that we would like this to be an urban amenity, is what we're trying to illustrate here. Jumping back and looking at the previous entry, very similar to the using the same materials and gates and the same wall. There would be a structure kind of backed up against it. So slight change in color scheme and the look of it. Going back to looking into the Love Burger, and this is where you'll see the revisions to the shade structure. Also the revisions to the color. This is the color that we would like to propose as opposed to the faux graffiti. It's just a standard kind of you know, brownish grayish building color. And then this is the revised covered takeout area that we're talking about, with kind of different style matching more towards the metal building. Jumping back to the overall view again, and a little better look at the pickleball courts that Miguel was describing before, kind of a little bit of a zoom in on how that would pair with the Corbett building. Here's the Corbett building you see back here, and you see these roll-up garage doors we have in a project so that you could see into the pickleball. The idea that would be open most of the time, and then the exterior pickleball courts And then from the ground level, these are some shade ramadas that would be, again, amenities too, so people could sit and eat while watching play. And then I thought I had another rendering, but I don't. Jumping into the revised development plan that we have in right now, we actually picked up a couple of parking spaces. Very minimal changes to the site. You can see the clouded area. From the development plan perspective, we're only changing the outside of it. So this is what the new development plan would look like. All the landscaping all around the site remains. Actually increased landscaping and some trees and things that we're adding when we're doing the pickleball courts. And so again, just to recap last slide, historic core building remains the same, different use on the inside. Pickleball courts where the event tent was, and then the revised takeaway cover takeout area that we from the new building, the Loveburger building. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the presentation at this point, and please feel free to ask us any questions. Miguel, would you like to? Is there anything else you want to add to that before we turn it over to comments?
Okay, thank you both. Let's go ahead and see if commissioners have questions. Who'd like to begin? Joel, do you have anything?
No, not at this point.
Okay, Savannah.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little unclear about on the elevation, what's existing and what's new. Can you just go over that? There was a big yellow panel that was prominent that I don't remember being. Yeah, could you just talk about that? Like the masonry there is currently like existing, right? But the
right. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, wrong direction. So yeah, this is an existing masonry wall. This is an existing these kind of elements here, these kind of sort of tower elements. These are all existing. The wall is existing, and then what we would be adding on the gates are new. This little metal piece we've added onto the top for a little extra security is new, and then the yellow piece that you see, kind of looking back, is this piece here is actually a structure that is in the that is this. Let's see, it's kind of like you're looking at the back side of this piece, right? I'm sorry, on the wrong side. You're looking at this piece right here. This is a covered structure that's going to be an outdoor bar. So we've got these covered ramadas and this outdoor bar. So that's what you're sort of seeing from the wrong direction. I apologize. That's what you're seeing from the revised street now.
It's a pretty small structure, Savannah. It's about 9 by 20, and there's no indoor seating and no storage. It's just a bar to help feed the area, because the footprint of the actual restaurant is only about 4,100 square feet.
Okay, that's clear. Thanks. And then my other question was about, you mentioned on the, I think previously on the side of the Corbett, there was the patio, but now the patio, the structure doesn't exist. But are you changing that facade at all? You mentioned like a roll-up garage doors. Can you just talk about like those openings within that elevation? I wasn't quite certain of the scope.
There's no change to that facade at all. Those garage doors were all previously approved, and there's absolutely no change to the Corbett facade on the east.
On the east, okay.
Yeah, as Miguel mentioned, this area here was, all these roll-up garage doors were all previously approved, and they were going to serve as an access point to the canopy, which was the restaurant's patio and this indoor-outdoor space that we were proposing. But we're not going to construct the patio, and the garage doors are just going to remain so that we can utilize them in the future when we do build the restaurant out.
Oh, okay, so there's still that space reserved there for a structure and potentially in the future. Okay, but it's similar in concept to your previous presentation where it really remains separate from the building or touching or
exactly, yes.
Integrating with the building.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, I think that's all my questions. I guess I'm curious. The last one is the canopy that's in the right of way. That's very distinct now because of the change in structural expression and material. That's in the, you said that was in the right of way. So how is that working? That is the city approving that as a TRE or something? I'm just curious about that.
So the city has reviewed it through the transportation department, through the OIP, through the PIA, and also through the development plan process, and has approved it. It's actually a permanent easement, and architecturally, structurally, they've all approved it. And because the design was necessary to go to more a heroic column versus a post and beam, because of the issues working around TDOT's utilities and the city's utilities.
So it's but that column, it looks concrete. It's steel, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the whole structure is in the right of way?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. This whole structure here is in the right of way, and we proposed this very early on to Department of Transportation and various people, decision makers at the city. Could we make this work? Originally this came about. We were designing this project when COVID was in full swing, and takeout was one of the few ways that these restaurants were staying viable. And we wanted to accentuate the idea of the takeout and cover these parking spaces as a place for people to, and Uber Eats and things like that, and really try to maximize that. And we received favorable response from the city, and we were allowed to get an easement to build this in the right of way. And then the change in structure also came about once we were working with the various utilities. We had to get it high enough so that they could get underneath of it to do work in the future, and also be able to clear all these existing utilities. And it almost died multiple times, but it kept on persevering, and a lot of people liked it. So we've kept it in the project in its modified form.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I liked the original structure, the way it kind of tied in with the kind of the rhythm and the grid. But I think this works too. It kind of looks like retro drive-in style. So that's kind of interesting. The masonry that's shown in this view that's up right now, is that all new, or is some of that existing?
Yeah, that's all new, but it's recycled material. So you can kind of see in the corner of the screen over here, there's a little piece of the existing wall from the previous view. So we've had to tear portions of this wall down to other parts of the site. So we saved the material so that we could repurpose it and try to bring that down to this end of the project.
Okay, where did you have to tear it down?
There were places, let's see, let me jump back to that aerial photograph. There were some right in this area here where we're going to be proposing a new, I don't know if this, get to my hand so you can see it, right in this area here. We were bringing utilities out to the street, and there were parts of it that were falling down. So we saved the brick from this area all in here. And so we're turning that into, it's hard to see it from this view, but this will be a new entry into the pickleball courts as well. We wanted there to be access here, so it seemed a good place to save all the brick that we took out from this area.
And also, Savannah, from the east facade, actually, because there was a property realignment, and that wall was in complete disrepair. So along the east property line, about the first 25%, we're recycling all that also.
Okay. Thanks. I like that. And I think that's all the questions I have at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Savannah. How about Carol?
No, I don't have anything. I'm not familiar with pickleball, so I have no idea whether you're gonna have balls breaking the glass or what, but I know nothing about it. I guess I'm showing my age, but looks interesting.
Like tennis, it's like I think it's kind of a weird version of it's like a smaller version of tennis. So basically, a lot of these public tennis courts around town, you can take 2 tennis courts and create 3 pickleball courts out of them by turning the pickleball courts sideways. And there's a lot of our different tennis complexes around the city are adding pickleball because it's a thing that people like to do. It's a little more casual than tennis, and I think easier to play for most people.
Mm-hmm. And also
more like a wiffle ball.
Is it a safe thing to put inside?
Oh,
of the
if you could
structure?
see, I wish my camera was working, because the pickleball is basically, it's like I'm holding one in my hand. It's like a wiffle ball, basically. Like, it's really light. And then the paddle is almost like a ping pong table paddle.
Oh,
It's,
okay.
the joke about it is that when people talk about competitive pickleball, and I laugh, because it's like, it's like competitive badminton or something, like, how competitive really is it? It's just, it's a game.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and Carol, a lot of these retirement communities, places like Saddlebrook Ranch, they're either remodeling old tennis courts or putting in pickleball courts to start with, because it's a lot more, it is more casual, and I think more people feel that they can play and get exercise, so.
Oh, so since I'm in that age group, I guess I need to.
Well, no, me too, and I'm like, okay.
Okay,
I was
Get
surprised.
with the trend.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, so let's see, who haven't I asked? Jan or Ricky?
This is Ricky. Oh, Jane, do you want to go?
Key, go ahead.
Okay. I also don't know what pickleball is, so I feel the same, Carol. As for the little coverings that are being built by the pickleball courts, those are all new, correct?
Yes, these are all new, and they would be shade, areas of shade for people the idea is that you would want to go over to the Love Burger, get food, take it over here and eat while you're watching your pickleball games.
And is that just wood posts with like a steel top?
It's actually all steel. So zoom in here again. The idea is that there would be steel structures with kind of with a steel roof. It actually ties back into the metal building from the Love Burger on the other side is kind of what we're trying to sort of tie into.
Okay. And then I really like that you guys have the pickle bar. I just like that name. I think it's really funny with the pickleball court. I don't have any other comments.
Okay, thank you. Jan?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up on Savannah's comment about the steel kind of wall / building / bar. That seems kind of jarring and incongruous compared to what was there. And I just wondered if you'd looked at having the bar at the other end and having another open ramada there along the street as more of a street presence and preserving more of the previous look.
Well, conceptually, the bar is pretty small, so we purposely actually wanted to anchor that area with the bar. The bar is only, it's less than 200 square feet. It's about 200 square feet, and so we wanted to screen a little bit from the street. If you can see it, kind of right. Yeah, that's a good view of it. So we kind of purposely wanted to anchor the two on each end. And one of the issues with the other side was a flood zone. The other one is just a smaller storage room, and it's much lower in the floodplain. So we have an issue on the site that we still haven't been pulled out of the federal flood area. We're hoping in the next 4 years with this added realignment and change with all the links project that we were going to come out of it. The project was supposed to come out of it in the first phase of the whole streetcar, and there was some errors that did not pull us out of there. So that area over there, we couldn't do a house structure without being almost 3 feet above finished floor. So that was one of the main reasons. And then the second reason was also because of the size of the structure, we purposely wanted it on the street where it was also a little bit more recognizable. And we wanted to give the street a little bit more structure and composition because otherwise it's just it was a pretty low brick building, the existing brick building. So we actually thought that it added a little bit more interest along the street base.
Okay. Then the question about the portion of the wall that was removed, was that part of the previous approval?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I just have to say in terms of pickleball, I've never played it. I'm not that familiar with it, but I previously lived almost 30 years on the area west of Seattle where it was invented for children as a pickup game by a group of parents. And it's kind of amusing to see it take off, become such a phenom.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. They put together, what did they have that day for kids to play with? They had a wiffle ball, they had a ping pong paddle and a badminton net. And
Just 1 second, okay.
so
they've already flipped courts at Randolph. I think they're doing it where I live in Sam Hughes at Himmel, and they've done quite a few. Yeah, quite a few courts have already been flipped, or not flipped, but repurposed, still keeping tennis courts, but just taking a couple of courts and turning it into 4 courts.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Are we ready for a motion?
It's just a motion to approve as presented, yeah?
That's what I'm thinking. Commissioners, do you have other thoughts?
I can make a motion then.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So on the matter of HPZ 22-41, 340 North 6th Avenue, we recommend approval as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there further discussion? Okay, then I'll go ahead and call the vote. Joel?
Yes. Yes.
Savannah?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Jan?
Aye.
Ricky?
Aye.
And Terry votes aye. So the motion carries 6-0 unanimously. Thanks very much for the presentation.
Good luck.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, let's move on to item 5, the Task Force on Inclusivity Report Recommendations. Item 5A is discussion on incorporation of the task force on Inclusivity Report Recommendations, which is continued work on the best practices document. We have the final changes for the draft, and I'm sending it today to all the people we talked about for internal review, and the transportation and historic landscapes both have it on their meeting agendas for next week to discuss. I wanted to ask if it would have been difficult on today's, because we're already over 2 hours into the meeting, to have any brain cells left to work on it if we were reviewing it today to finalize. So my question is, it's sort of related to what is on the agenda for the meeting at the end of the month in 2 weeks. Would folks, and this depends on how much time we give people to review, and I think it is relatively short. The city and county probably have a little bit more to add. The goal is we shouldn't keep pushing this beyond the June meeting of the full commission to give to them and vote on it at that time, because I don't know if we can count on there still being a joint commission in July, or if that's pushing it too much. I don't know. We could give people a little bit longer to review, and then, I'm just throwing this out there. What if we have a lot of cases for the 26th, like this meeting, or is it it's the 26th, I believe, for our next meeting? Would we be able to get together for an hour, let's say on Thursday the 2nd, just to finalize that draft, so that we're not competing with 4 or 5 other cases? What are people's thoughts?
I can do that if it is an hour.
Thursday, the 2nd of June, what time?
1 o'clock, it would be the same time.
1 o'clock, okay, sure.
I'm thinking, Jody, can you do it that time? Are you still there?
Still here. What was the day again?
It would be June 2nd.
June 2nd at 1 o'clock.
Yeah. And you'd probably have to send.
Yeah, I'm free at that time.
What about everybody else?
I'm good.
I
Joel?
can do it.
Yeah, it's fine. Thursday, June 2nd.
Okay, so I can give folks a little bit longer to review, and especially the city and county. And then Carol and Ricky will have to get together in enough time to incorporate the comments that, I have no idea how many comments we're going to get from the internal reviewers. Right? And then I think we should also be sure that the county is there to discuss the changes. So we have a little bit of time to, I'm sure somebody from the county could be on to discuss their requested changes, or edits or whatever. So hopefully that works. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, sorry, Terry. So June 2nd, you said at 1 p.m. Do you want me to send out a Zoom meeting to everybody for that?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm hoping that I'm not misspeaking, that I have something that someone scheduled me for. I'm looking. I don't right now. Oh, we'll see. But I think we can be done relatively quickly, especially if, it's agendized and you've got it. And I think we would do just a little bit different wording. Jody, maybe, referred to the best practices document like I was doing on like I suggested for the transportation and HLS agendas.
Okay, so it's a one item agenda though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unless you've got some emergency thing. See, the weird thing is that because of when the first of the month falls, the commission meeting is early in June. It's the 8th. So that's why I'm pushing it so we get it out of the way, because we don't really know what's going to happen. And this, if the full commission approves it being sent along, then I can get all that stuff out to mayor and council and the supervisors and all that. So that'd be good to get it off our plates. So.
Do you think an hour will be sufficient?
An hour?
Yeah.
I know you could make it an hour and a half, but and then if people can't stay on for an hour and a half, I think if that's our only item, I think we should be good. What do folks think? An hour and a half just for backup? Because even if we lost a full core, if not all 6 people were on, we could still operate with 4 if we had to. What do folks
I'll
think?
put it for an hour and a half if you guys end. It'll be blocked on your calendars. So if you end early, you get free time. Woohoo.
Yeah, whoa, that's a good one. Okay, so let's move on then to item 6, which is current issues for information discussion. Jody, would you like to update us on minor reviews?
Sure. On the 29th, we had 3 minor reviews. They were all for signs. One for 61 East Congress, one for 311 East Congress, and one for 14 South Arizona. Joel was the PRS reviewer on those. Joel, did you want to say anything about those reviews?
Well, yeah, if you want me to, they, as signs, I guess, typically are reviewed. We were mainly concerned about penetrations into the face of the buildings, and wanted in all these cases to make sure that there were as few penetrations as possible, and that the sign not disturb any structure of the building, like on the one on Congress for the Century Room. There's a corbel that we had to miss with the sign, and all of those signs were put up with very few penetrations, and in a way that accomplished those goals. So, yeah. Is that clear? You want me to go into specifics on each one, or?
No.
Okay.
Just thought you might want to add some information. And then on the 11th, there was a minor review done for the Baffert at 5 Points. They had a construction change where they were changing the window openings sizes on the first floor, and Savannah and Michael did that review together.
Okay,
Savannah,
that
did
was
you wanna
on the
say anything?
11th. I'm sorry, yesterday?
On the 11th, yes.
Okay, and
Yesterday.
then the other one was 429. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I mean, there was the first time it was reviewed, it was kind of speculative in terms of how the TI would lay out within the first floor or multiple TIs, and it turns out they do have an actual tenant for about half the first floor, and that tenant had specific uses about openings. So the modular kind of idea or concept along the facades was maintained as much as possible, but storefront was kind of reduced in some areas but added in others to kind of make up and ensure that the percentage of glazed portion of the elevation was maintained or met the requirements. So we had a few comments about kind of making things like a little more evened out, but otherwise it was approved.
Okay, thank you. Do you have upcoming minor reviews that you need to talk about, Jody?
I think that Michael, who is not here today, will probably be scheduling some. I know that he sent out some payment requests for a number of things, but I don't have the upcoming ones just yet.
Okay, so I'll just note that Michael will be scheduling upcoming reviews soon.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, item 6B, appeals.
We do not have any appeals. We are okay with that.
Good. 6C, zoning violations.
We are still continuing to work with property owners, but we don't have any at this moment that are coming forward.
Okay, 6D, review process issues. Is there anything folks would like to bring up? Okay, none. Item 7, summary of public comments. Did we have any?
We did not.
Okay. Item 8, future agenda items for upcoming meetings, and the next meeting is scheduled for May 26th. Again, on June 2nd. So what do you have for us, Jody?
We have some reviews that have just gone through Barrio that will be making their way to you. We also will have a review for the El Presidio, aka the Clement Fountain restoration that will be coming for you for review. It's not currently designated, it is eligible, so it'll be listed as a courtesy review. And we have meetings this coming Tuesday for both Armory Park and West University, but chances are those will be the first part of June that you'll see those.
Yeah, so our next meeting would be June 9th, correct?
I don't have my calendar.
Yeah,
open,
after the
but-
2nd, it would be June 9th. So, you know, hopefully, yeah, because if we meet on the 2nd, then the second Wednesday is the 9th. Okay.
And that's, yeah, pretty much what we have going on right now.
Okay, thank you. Well, everyone, I appreciate everyone staying on for this long meeting and various things, and this will be another doozy to listen to. So I'll go ahead and say that we're adjourned at 3:30. So thanks again, everyone, and Jody, I'll wait for the link and so on. Okay.
Thank
Thank you guys.
Bye-bye. Take care,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.